Welcome back to National Jelly Roll Day Sew Along video 9. Let's talk about trimming. Now, every quilt is different when you are trimming your quilt top after you quilt it or get it back from your long armor. And for this one in particular, this is why I said that tip all the way back to when I was talking about joining the 3 squares together and making sure that the 6.5-inch strips were on the top and the bottom. That's going to help you square up your quilt top. And so I use that it's probably about 2.25 for math. But I'm just going to say 2 inches from here on out. And don't take my measurements, measure your own quilt top, because we all sew with a slightly different seam allowance and quilt it differently. So like if you're more densely quilted, it just, it might change a little bit, but please just go off of your quilt. So I'm going to say 2 inches because that's what mine is for the sake of this video. So I line up my 2 inches on my ruler, my square ruler on the corner of the quilt along my right-hand side, or if you're left-handed. But however you're cutting, you square up, lining up with the center outer piece of the square on the bottom where I'm cutting right now, and then the entire 2-inch seam along the side. And you'll kind of see it's a little confusing, but you'll see as we go along. Okay, flatten out your quilt, and you're going to line up your 2 inches on your ruler just on one side now because we're not at a corner. And I line up the 2 inches, though. I still line up in 2 different areas. I line up on that seam I'm pointing to now, which is the end of a square, and then I line up on that 2-inch seam where the typewriters and the pink fabric match. So line it up. You can see, hopefully you can tell on this video, but you can see my 2-inch mark on my square ruler is lined up with the top of the square and then the typewriter seam. And then you'll do this until you get to another end. And then for this end, since there's no squares in the corner, I'm still just measuring or lining up on the seam 2 inches where that typewriter and pink are still matching. And then at the top, I'm still using that square ruler, and mine's a 15-inch square. I'm lining it up with the 2 inches where I'm pointing right now. That's 2 inches of that seam on a square. So I'm using, because I know those squares are square. And so I use that as my guide around the whole quilt. And then because there's times on the side, which we're about to be on, that you don't have a 2-inch guide to help you along the way. So you just make sure you have a ruler long enough. For instance, on this one, I bring out my 6.5-inch ruler, and I line up again that 2-inch mark or seam on the bottom square and the top square. So that way I know that my quilt is going to be square as I trim it. As long as you had your, piecing and all of that square, you'll be fine. Don't worry about it too much. Don't overthink it. You've got this. And then I'm getting to another end. Let's go. I love that this is not a giant quilt. And I line up, or I mark up again on the 2-inch seam. But then when I get to my corner, I did use my 6.5-inch ruler all the way to the end on this one, but I still use my square ruler on the corners. That way I know my corners are square and my binding will come out perfectly. So then I take my square ruler and I just do as we did before on that first corner. I use the 2-inch markings along the square on both sides and then all the way up. So you'll do this for your entire quilt. Here I go bringing out the 6.5-inch ruler so I get more distance and I make sure I can line up my squares. Actually, this side doesn't matter because you got the long strip on the side. That makes it easy. So do your corner again. Ooh, it looks gorgeous. And then I think there's 2 more cuts. There's this one. And then you get to your end. And then just make sure it's still lining up and that your ruler is hitting the previous part where you cut as well. And you're done. Yay. Ooh, that wasn't that scary. Come back later for a binding video or two.